Production support for In Focus provided by Easel. Your favorite images on canvas, more beautiful and affordable than ever before. Easel.com.
Welcome to In Focus with Eden Lane.
This week we're at the Vintage Theater for their production of Mack and Mabel, and later we'll visit the leads. But we begin tonight with the musical director, Eric Weinstein.
Thanks for coming in a little early today before tonight's performance to talk to us about this production of Mack and Mabel at the Vintage Theater. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
You've been involved in the theater community here in Colorado for such a long time. I can't believe this is our first meeting.
I know, this is great.
Where have you been most of the time? At Heritage?
Yeah, Heritage Square Music Hall is where they were open for about 25 years, and unfortunately they just closed. But I was up there for about 23 of those 25 years, kind of off and on. But
performing and being music director?
Mostly performing in the band, occasionally on stage, and then playing intermissions and lounge and some of the other stuff. Absolutely.
How did you get connected with Vintage Theater?
This
isn't your first production with them.
No, but this is my second production. I was in Grey Gardens, the remount that we just did a few months ago. I was fortunate to play the part of Gould for that. So we actually brought the piano on stage, and I got to play that. And
you were a Gould who could play.
I was a Gould who could play. So and that was fun. I just really loved doing that show.
And had you been connected with Vintage before that at all, or did you just go to an audition because you liked the show? Well, how did that happen for you?
I had worked with Bernie before on South Pacific with Performance Now last year.
Who was the director of that production?
Who was the director of that production.
And this production.
And this production. So he asked me to do this show, and we auditioned the show clear back in November of last year. And we did combined auditions for Mack and Mabel and Grey Gardens, and I Think I Do, I Do. And I was talking with the director for Grey Gardens, and she said, hey, I happen to have a part for a piano player, and it just kind of worked out.
Tell me your take on Mack and Mabel. How familiar were you with this piece before you started working on it? Because this is one of my favorites from back in my college days.
I'd actually never heard of the show.
You'd never heard of it?
Never heard of it. So, looked it up, got the soundtrack, the original, and as well as the 96.
Bernadette Peters and Robert Preston.
Right. Yeah. So listened to that a bit. I also got the new one from 96 from the West End production, and kind of compared those two and got a good idea for the show.
This seems more aligned with the West End production rather than the original Broadway production.
Absolutely.
Tell me how it's different.
How it's different. The plot of the two is slightly different. The ending of the original show is different than the ending of the show.
Yeah, because we really didn't get a happy ending
Right.
originally at all.
Right. Right.
If you're familiar with Mack and Mabel because you fell in love with it a while ago, you will still find all the pieces that you loved in this
Absolutely.
production at the Vintage Theater.
Yes, definitely.
So tell me about this music.
The music, it's very, very traditional early Hollywood music. So it's big, it's very brass heavy, which is why I brought in an extra brass player. So I've got two trumpet players. It's just a big, bold sound. And there's a couple of sections when we're filming an actual silent movie. So I'll underscore the silent movie like they used to do in the various movie houses around the country. So I studied some of that style and figured out what they used to play.
What was that like to uncover what that was like, that sort of underscoring music? What was that like for you?
It's a lot of stuff that we actually used to do at the music hall with the melodramas, and they used to show silent movies there and things like that. So it's a style that I was familiar with. But I just did some research on that, and for a while, the movie houses were the largest employers of live musicians.
Yeah. Because every single movie house had to have at least their own piano player, sometimes even maybe a violinist or something else.
Or like the large organs that had a whole bunch of different instruments that you can, also have things that will play the drums and play, all the other stuff.
How many pieces in your band for this production?
There's 7 players, including myself.
In that little spot?
In that little spot.
You must all get very friendly during.
We get very friendly, and the cast they kind of have to weave their way through us to get on stage.
So they have to be friendly with you too.
Yes. Yes.
Tell me about the musicians that you were able to assemble and the sound that you have worked on for this production.
I brought in the best musicians I could find. I think they're really, really great players. They're all players that I had worked with before.
At
Over
Heritage.
the years. Actually, the drummer I had worked at Heritage with almost 20 years ago, and I've kind of kept tabs on him ever since. The other players are ones that I worked with at Performance Now for some of the shows I music directed for them.
And tell me about the sound. You said it's that early 20s kind of sound. Tell me a little bit more about how that is applied to musical theater, because it really isn't exactly the period. It's still musical theater.
It is still musical theater, and the old Hollywood orchestras were very, very large, very, very brass heavy. I mean, they would be just 10, 15, 20 players. And for the modern music theater, there are very few places that can afford that. So we have to take that a big as sound as we can get and fit it into this little space we have here, and not overwhelm the actors and this small house that we have here.
The actors are, at least the leads are mic'd in these productions. Is that correct?
Yes.
How is that balancing the sound of 7 pieces in that tiny little space in this fairly intimate theater? Even though the vocalists are mic'd, that still must be a little bit of a challenge. Tell me about that.
It is a challenge. If you look back there, all those are actual very heavy curtains to mute the sound. I worked with, especially the trumpet players, to kind of bring the sound way down so they're not overpowering. And it's just something we worked on through production week to get that balance. And the cast, every single one of the cast is very, very, very good singer, and they all project. And from day one, they've just been it's been a great ensemble. So they're just singing their hearts out, and many of them don't need mics because they're very, very strong.
I have to say, the night that we were here was it opening night? I think
It
it was your
opening
opening
night,
night. They were singing full out. You would have expected the kind of sound from a Broadway house, because it was so full and so rich, and a lot of dynamics. Now tell me how you balance that in this score that could very easily be sort of cliche. How do you balance the dynamics of each number to make it a little bit different?
Basically, from day one, we set the goal that every single person in the chorus is going to be singing full out. No one's going to hide.
Yeah.
We were very picky
You
about...
don't have the great tap dancer who's back there lip syncing.
Exactly. So just, every single person is a really, really great singer, and we were real particular about entrances and cutoffs and dynamics, and just from day one.
Is there something unusual about the approach to the ensemble parts of the vocalists in this show that they had to work on particularly for this?
Not necessarily, just that I set the expectation from day one that every single person is going to sing out. And
Sing out.
Yeah, exactly.
So some of these songs, people may know even if they aren't familiar with the show. Were any of these songs familiar to you? Because it's a well-loved Jerry Herman score, but some of these songs appear in other shows. So tell me, was there a song that you knew before you started working on this show?
I think Time Heals Everything is one of the more popular ones.
It's a very popular audition song, at least back in the day.
Yes.
A popular audition ballad. So how do you help the artists make these songs that could be kind of standard and sort of cliche? How do you help them, as their music director, make it their own version of this character and this song?
I ask them to learn it as much as they can without the recordings. So they can find their own voice, find their own character, and their own phrasing, their own interpretation. And one of the things I also say from day one is I want the singing to flow naturally from the speaking. So whatever character they have going into that scene, it should be a natural just a seamless transition into the song.
Do you find rehearsing maybe just the few lines before the song begins helps that, or is that just a thought, a direction that you give them beforehand?
A bit of both.
Bit of both.
Yeah. If one of the singers is having a problem finding that character voice within the song, I'll have them do the lines before and transition it, and then just practice that several times, so they can keep that character and that approach in the song.
So now this makes your second production at the Vintage Theater. First was as a member of the company on stage, but still playing. Now you're sort of tucked back in there, but still really taking a lead role, as it were, for the musical. Tell me about your experience at Vintage Theater.
I really like this company. They bring together a great artistic staff. You look at the costumes, And the costumes are top notch. The sound mixing is top notch. The direction, of course, Bernie is one of the top directors around. He does a fantastic job. The leads, just everyone that comes into this production is top notch, and then it all just comes together to produce this fantastic performance.
It's a fairly large ensemble for a small theater company,
Right.
which has its plus in terms of getting that full, rich sound out of them when they're singing. But then they have to tap dance in the middle of this show,
Yes.
which could be a little acoustically overwhelming.
Yeah.
How does that affect you and your band?
Well, there's only one tap number. So. and again, going back to the balance thing, when they're full out tapping, I tell the band, just play out.
Just play.
Play out.
Just let it go.
Have fun with it.
Well, we really did see everyone just sing full out and play full out when we were here. It was a lot of fun, and I really appreciate you taking time to tell me about your direction, your music direction of this show, and your experiences at Vintage Theater. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
The actors playing Mack and Mabel also agreed to come in early on show day to meet with us. Here's my time with these charming actors, Keegan Flaugh and Rachelle Wood.
Okay.
Thank you for coming in early today. I know it's a show night for you, and to talk to us about this production of Mack and Mabel, I really appreciate that.
Certainly.
Yes.
I don't think I've really seen either of you in big lead roles like this, but I know you've done them. So tell me, how do you get connected to the Vintage Theater for this production of Mack and Mabel?
Rachelle and I actually had the privilege to play opposite each other at Town Hall Arts Center's Dirty Rotten Scoundrels. I played Lawrence and she was Christine. So that was our first leads opposite each other experience, which was wonderful.
That was fun.
And how did that translate to getting up here? Did you audition together?
We didn't. It was a surprise. I didn't even know you were going out for Mack. But I basically followed Bernie because I love him, and I always loved working with him. So I knew he was doing Mack and Mabel, and I said, okay, I'm auditioning. So
Did you know the show?
I had zero clue about the show at all. No.
Just because of the director, I want to do that.
Yeah. I find that he just really pulls a lot out of you as an actor, and he's really great. So
He'll be happy to hear that.
he does. He's so helpful. So that's why I did.
How about you? Did you know this show?
In some regards, I did the same thing as Rachelle did. I sort of followed Bernie. Now, Bernie had contacted me and asked me to come to the audition. He had seen Dirty Rotten Scoundrels at Town Hall, and any time a director contacts you personally and says, would you come do this, it's very flattering.
It's
And
not a guarantee you'll get cast,
no,
but it does mean
not by any means.
they enjoyed working.
Exactly. And I had never worked with Bernie before. My daughter had, so that was my experience, was seeing his director style when my daughter was in Jane Eyre with him, and I was really impressed. And so whenever he asked me to do that, it was very flattering, and I immediately wanted to just come out and do that here.
And did you know Mack and Mabel before?
I did not.
You
I
did
did
not?
I love it now.
Yes.
I love it now.
Yes.
Yeah? What makes you love it now? Aside from the fact that you're in it.
Well, I mean, there's just a lot of heart to this show. There's a lot of character stuff that just, especially as Mack, I love the connection that I have with Mabel, but then I also love the connection that I get to have with the audience. Just the fact that I can sort of try to draw them into the story is just very exciting for me.
In this staging of it, you do break the wall a lot because you're talking to us. You don't really do so, but you kind of sing to us.
Yes.
How does that feel to be delivering those numbers? A couple of them are pretty emotional
Yes.
numbers that you're belting out there for us. How does that feel?
Both numbers that I do are very vulnerable. It's like you're inviting complete strangers into a place that nobody else really gets to see. So yes, I'm very glad I'm not Mabel, that being said, but I love being her on stage.
Yeah.
So I guess, yeah, vulnerable would be the word I would put to that.
This is very definitely musically a good old-fashioned musical theater piece. It's Jerry Herman. I mean, what else would we get from Jerry Herman? We get that great standard. You can hum all the songs. They're lovely in their construction, lyrics, but it's not a happy musical theater story. What is that like as an artist to get to bring us that contradiction, the lovely music, but the story that isn't necessarily what you expect when you think of musical theater?
Yes. For me, I find it very refreshing because musical theater does have that very big, wow, ta-da kind of feel to it. A lot of the
Sometimes it really
times.
does, but sometimes it's just a
Yes.
reputation, but still.
That's true. That's very true. So, that being said, it's very, very fun as an actor to be in something that has a little bit more meat, a little bit more grit to play with. So, that's what I love.
Absolutely. There was an interesting thing that Bernie talked about early on in the rehearsal process, that the first act of Mack and Mabel is sort of classic musical theater comedy, and the second act of Mack and Mabel sort of gives us more of a classic musical theater drama. And it's just it's so unique and so interesting to get to sort of play with both aspects of that and try to deliver that to the audience and get them to sort of understand what we're really going for.
Tell me who your Mack Sennett is.
Who my Mack Sennett is?
He's not necessarily always thought of as a nice guy.
No.
In fact, he comes right out and says at the beginning of the show that he's not really that nice. I mean, he's not a bad guy
Right.
necessarily, but he says, I'm not such a nice guy.
Sure. Mack, he's very conflicted. There's a lot of things about Mack that are just spectacular. He's a brilliant director of silent pictures, but at the same time, he can't handle the change that's coming to talkies. He has zeroed in on his niche within movie making, and he's stuck there. And he's also zeroed in on his way. Everything is his way or the highway. I don't know how many times he says, well, we're doing this with or without you. And so he deeply loves Mabel from very early on. He deeply loves her, but he can't put it into words.
Or into action.
Or into
most of the
action either. I mean, he sort of bullies her and beats her down, and it makes me sad from a Keegan standpoint to do that.
Because you are a nice guy.
Yes.
He is a nice guy.
Yes, but at the same time, it is a challenge to try to get that across. That sort of harshness that Mack has.
The way you describe him, if someone wasn't familiar with this story and only heard it takes place in the era of silent movies, that's actually very contemporary kind of situations and conflicts.
Sure.
Mabel, on the other hand, could very easily be this one-dimensional sort of weak woman. That's not how you're playing her. So tell me who Mabel is for you.
Well, I did a lot of research on Mabel Normand, and the story of the musical and real life is very, very different.
Especially this adaptation of it.
Exactly. If you just look at the script, she's very much dependent on Mack, very much in love, gaga goo goo, I would do anything for him. But when you look at Mabel Normand as a person, she was a firecracker, so independent. She actually wrote and directed in real life. She was one of the first women to do that. So I think
Before anyone said women shouldn't do this.
exactly, she broke the mold. She was amazing. So I think pulling the real Mabel into this musical version of her was the key for my version of Mabel. if that
What was
makes
the most
sense.
surprising thing you learned about her as you did that research?
I guess the most surprising is that she didn't go for Mack. She said bye in real life. I mean, maybe that isn't surprising. If somebody cheated on me multiple times, I would say goodbye too. So maybe that's not a surprise. But yeah, I think that would be the answer. Bah.
That's a good answer.
Yeah.
Now there are some really fun songs in here, and there's some emotional songs in this piece. I want to know, because it probably changes from the time you started working on it to now, and it will change again before it's over. But what songs stick out to you, whether they're your songs or someone else's?
I actually love "Tap Your Troubles Away." I'm not in that at all. I sort of started out with a nice, heartfelt monologue to the audience, and then I leave, and I have a sort of a habit right now of.
Do you tap along in the back
I
here?
don't tap along because you don't want me to tap. That's not my thing. But I do stand over right behind the curtain over here and watch almost the whole number. It's just a blast to watch. The choreography of Jessica Hindley is just spectacular. She really did a bang up job on this show.
So Tap Your Troubles Away is the song that really sticks out to you at this point in the
Well,
in the
it's one of them.
Yeah.
It's one that I just have a heart for it. I love to watch my castmates do it, and it's just a ton of fun. Now, I mean, from a heart standpoint, I won't send roses. Obviously, Mack, he's sort of bearing his soul to her right there, saying, you know, as much as I love you, I can't bring myself to just give everything to you. I'm going to have to hold a lot of this back for movies because that's his life, his movies. Yeah. He's just one-dimensional in that regard sometimes.
That's that lesson that so many of us take a long time to learn, that when someone tells you who they are, you should listen.
You should listen. Yeah, exactly.
What songs, or whether they're yours or not, really stick out to you right now at this point in the run?
I think from the beginning, it's always been Time Heals Everything. I've focused very much on that song because it's such an important song for Mabel.
You have to not just sing it, but you have to really act in that song to make it work correctly. Yeah.
Yes, and Keegan has been such a help in actually making that possible. He's such a good scene partner, but I mean, it's not easy to just be heartbroken all by yourself. So I think that is something that I will always hold dearly to. It's just that ballad is beautiful, and I love.
There was a
singing
time
that song.
period where that was almost everyone's audition ballad. Did you know the song before?
I had no idea. I loved it. When I was looking up Mack and Mabel before I auditioned, I looked up Bernadette Peters performing
Your
it.
phrasing is very different than hers.
I honestly listened to it one time, and I loved her, and I loved the song.
And had to put it away.
I always put it away, just like Eric taught us to.
But that's good, because we do get your phrasing and your character in that song instead of an imitation of an icon. Both of you are playing roles that were created by Broadway icons.
True.
But you're giving us your own. I love that. I love that you're getting the space to do that in a theater like the Vintage Theater. What is it like to work with this company in this theater, telling this story that so many people who do love musical theater don't seem to know here in Colorado?
Yeah.
Sure. I've had just an amazing experience so far. The fact that this is my first show with Bernie, and the fact that it's my first show here at Vintage, it's going to be hard to top, to be quite honest with you. It's one of those roles that I mean, I've done several leading man roles before, but this one, there's such an interesting aspect to Mack that I just have really latched on to, and I just feel like I just want to grow it every single time I go out there and do it. I just want to do something else to just really try to get it across and try to really help Rachelle with Mabel, and just to really connect with the audience. That's the way I approach every single show at this point, and just to try to soak it in every single moment that I can try to get out of this.
Yeah.
Just wring it out.
How about for you, telling this story that you didn't know beforehand, and that seems surprising to me that so many people don't know it.
I know.
But you get to share it with them and tell it for the first time to many. How does that feel?
I think I agree with Keegan. It feels very, very special. And there's just something about Mack and Mabel's relationship that I think that everybody can connect to and understand.
Yeah.
There's always that someone you can't get enough of. There's that someone that you will always forgive no matter what happens. And I think that we always wish to have a Mack. We always wish to have a Mabel to live life with and be a companion with. And even though they don't always get along and they yell at each other, it's a piece of real life instead of something that we pretend is life.
And the fact that you can both sing
that.
beautifully doesn't hurt either.
Well, thank you.
Yes, thank you.
I really appreciate you taking time on a show day to come in early and talk to us about this production of Mack and Mabel. It's a lot of fun, and I really appreciated not just your work as singers, but your work as actors. Thank you for sharing this story with us.
Thank you so much. It was our pleasure.
Yes.
Before we go, a brief montage from Vintage Theater's production of Mack and Mabel, featuring the song Movies Were Movies.
My Mabel. The kid. You're here. And the real hero who made time that big Senate finish has gone. Remember all those happy endings we gave? Yeah, I know. Movies were movies when you paid a dime to escape. Cheering the hero and kissing the man in a cape. Romance and action and thrills. Potter's gold in them hills. Movies were movies when turning the titles you know. You get a happy ending, dozens of wondering cops in a thundering chase. Getting a bang out of them, a rag in the face. Bandits attacking our train. One little tramp with a cane. Movies were moving when I ran the show.
Mack and Mabel plays the Vintage Theater through September 14th. Details at vintagetheater.com.
Remember to join us on Facebook and Twitter. Thanks for watching. Good night.